Hello, I have lettuce in my teeth, but you don't know that because this isn't a video where we go into my mouth. Today, I am starting a new series on my channel wherein we look at newly released characters, but after some time has passed since the release. So my thought for this is to call it No-Novelty character reviews, because I found that when a new character comes out, sometimes my judgment is kind of clouded by the novelty of the character. I mean, obviously, maybe a different playstyle comes in and you get kind of excited, and maybe your judgment's a little bit off because you're excited. I'm sure people who review characters try to look at it as objectively as you can, but there's also the factor of, does the character hold up over time? So it might be fun to play a new character for like a month, but then you get bored of them. Whereas some characters, maybe you're in it for the long haul, you really realize how much you love them after some time has passed, right? So that's the idea behind this series, the No-Novelty character reviews. We're starting it with Heizou. So Heizou came out maybe a month ago, maybe more than a month ago, and I have built mine pretty fully. He's pretty much done. There's a few artifacts that could be improved, but for the most part, he's pretty much done. He's built, talents built, he's got a nice weapon on him, but we'll talk about that later. And I had time to use him, so my thoughts can be maybe a little more clear than when he just came out. For me personally, it takes a little while to get kind of used to a character and to see really how they sit with me in the long term. That's the idea behind today's video. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mijin. I do stuff and things, and you can see that happen live. Wow. Let's get into the video. First and foremost, who is Heizou? What does he do? How does he play? I'm gonna tell you. Heizou's the newest 4-star character, Animal Catalyst. The reason that he really popped off in popularity was because his playstyle is very unique. It's more like martial artist instead of your typical throwing out some sort of element catalyst. So for that reason, a lot of people wanted to build him, were very excited about him, and I definitely got on board with the hype. I am on the bandwagon. It's a little bit bumpy, but it's evened out, and I'm gonna get off and talk to you about, what am I saying? Basically, people like him because different playstyle, you know, something new and fresh in the game. So, how does he work? Heizou is pretty much slotted to be a DPS character. I'm sure you could throw him on the field a little bit for some support. The problem is you need to gain something called declension stacks. So, what is a declension stack? So when you're on the field with Heizou, you'll notice he has this little like circular thing, and it has 4 parts to it. That tells you how many declension stacks he has. The way he gains a declension stack is by swirling an enemy. So you need an enemy to be infused with something, then you can use his auto attacks, swirl it, then you gain the declension stacks. The declension stacks make your skill, Heartstopper Strike, more powerful. So it's best to gain all the stacks before you throw his skill, because that will really help boost your damage. His ult is just kind of like a little mini tornado. It kind of reminds me of like the Animal Traveler, but not a full tornado, just kind of a gust, like, you know, like a little silent fart. I find his ult a little bit lackluster compared to his skill, but it's whatever. It just, you know, it works for what it works for. But really, the shining star of the show is the Heartstopper Strike skill. What you want to do with Heizou is you want to gain, like I said, those declension stacks. Basically, you kind of want your rotation to be a couple auto attacks and then a charged attack, and you can gain those stacks pretty quickly. Use it when it's full to deal maximum damage. Constellation-wise, C6 is really where it's at. I have C0, so this whole video will be based on a C0 Heizou, but you'll see that he can still do quite a bit of damage at C0. I can't even imagine C6. That would be dope. Yeah, C6, best constellation by far. At least he's a 4-star, is what I'll say. Basically, what C6 does is for every declension stack you have on your skill, you will get an extra 4% crit rate. So if you have all 4 stacks, that's going to be another 16% crit rate. And then your crit damage when you release your skill is going to be increased by 32%, which is a lot. Conviction is just something you gain when you have 4 declension stacks. So when you have all 4 stacks, Heizou will gain conviction. That's what conviction is. You don't have to do anything special. The 4 stacks, you have conviction. Therefore, when you have 4 declension stacks, you will have 16 added crit rate and 32% added crit damage, which is really nice, really good constellation. Obviously, I assume because 99.9% of people are going to build DPS Heizou, that this is the constellation to go for. Now, another interesting about Heizou is that you can build him EM or crit. I personally lean the crit route for reasons I will talk about later. Also, from the math I've seen from the people who do the math, thank you, appreciate you. But crit builds tend to do a little more damage damage. Depends on what artifacts you have. Everything can vary. I personally haven't been enjoying the crit build. Team-wise, Heizou does well with people who can do off-field damage just because then you're swirling and still getting that damage from your off-field supports. This is just my friendship team, so this is not, the ideal team. I'll talk about teams later in the video. It's also timestamped if you want to skip there. Heizou does well with those kind of supports. So before I get into the showcase, I'm going to show you my build, what I've done with my Heizou. Weapons, we're running R2 Skyward Atlas. I realize this is not the most free-to-play friendly option, but Standard Banner has decided that this is the only weapon I'm ever going to get from it, so I don't know what to tell you. I didn't want it either, okay? I am glad that I'm getting some use out of it because for the longest time I thought like, who the heck is going to use this? I don't run Catalyst DPS to begin with, so what a useless weapon, but in the end it worked out. This is a great weapon for Heizou. Obviously R2 is another boost. I would say possibly best in slot, depends on, Widsith, I'm sure mathematically could come close, but when I did my testing personally in Abyss, I found that Skyward Atlas was just far more reliable. This is the weapon I'm running. It's a great choice if you have it. Obviously Widsith is another excellent choice. I'm sure this is more accessible for people. If you ever find mitts on your Widsith too, you're golden, that's great for him. If you don't have a Widsith, Mappa Mare, which is a craftable weapon, you can use a billet to craft that. That's also a good choice. If you buy Battle Pass, you can use Solar Pearl as well. You could throw Lost Prayer if you had it on him, just for the stat stick. I don't think it's ideal. I haven't tested it because my Lost Prayer is not built, but honestly, if you had a Widsith, I might just go with that personally. Artifacts. Again, I did a lot of testing with the different sets. This is going to heavily depend on what sets you have available to you. Sometimes best in slot, theory, crafting, mathematics, it doesn't work out in reality because you might just not have the substats on those particular artifacts. So I have personally found that 2-piece VV, 2-piece Glad is pretty golden, pretty good. Now, I think this is more achievable as well because more people are going to have Glad pieces. You get them from boss drops. You can craft them in the strongbox. Although, by the time this video comes out, we'll be able to craft VV as well. So that is absolutely fabulous. This will become more accessible. 4-piece VV, I tried it and I don't have great VV pieces to begin with, so it might have just been my personal set. For me, I have far better Glad than VV, so this is a combination that is working best for me. Sands, we're running attack, goblet, animo bonus, of course, and your circlet is going to vary depending on what weapon you're running and what subsets you already have. Crit rate, I would say, is probably the safest bet to go because I assume most people are running Widsith on him, and Widsith, of course, has crit damage, so you'll probably want to balance that with some crit rate. So that is what I'm running on my Heizou. Works absolutely fabulously for me. Like I said, I tried a few different variations, and this worked best. Teams, let's talk about Heizou teams. These 3 characters actually have been kind of my go-to team with Heizou. Forget Cookie, she's here for friendship. She doesn't do anything. Sorry, Cookie. But the reason I found that these 2 characters are really great with Heizou is because obviously Benny's going to buff your Heizou, and I love Benny, so. And my Benny being C6 actually does not affect Heizou being a Catalyst character, so great choice there. Get yourself a Benny buff. Mona, I switched my Mona build from a Widsith Mona to a Thrilling Tales of the Dragon Slayer Mona so that we can get an added attack buff, and I found that that really helped boost the damage as well. Mona, Benny, great teammates. I've also found a team like this is really fun to run. I found that Heizou works really well with characters that have off-field damage capabilities, so the Shogun with her skill, Zhangling with her burst, that seems a lot of fun. Also, if you don't want to run a Zhangling, like a Xingqiu, he's got to give us a poem every time we select him. Xingqiu Yelan, that would be also a great choice. You could also do like a taser comp, kind of like this. I imagine this would be fun, but my problem is my Fischl is not built and is kind of garbo, so someday I will build her. For now, it's not the strongest team, it's fun, but a team like this is also a great option. Personally, my favorite team, this is a classic. I love teams like this. I mean, I love these characters anyway, so just throwing Heizou in the mix, of course it's a good time, and this is a very strong team. But those are some examples of teams that I've been running. Honestly, anyone that can buff your Heizou's damage, a Benny, another Catalyst running Thrilling Tales, could be Barbara, could be Mona, and then, characters that have sub DPS off-field capabilities, that works great with Heizou because he's swirling, he's throwing out his punches, and you're getting all that damage. So those are all great team options. So to be totally honest, my initial impression of Heizou was not great. I found him pretty lackluster, and his damage was not that great. It took a little bit of finessing to kind of get it right. Obviously, his talents need to be leveled, but mine were, and I still was finding like the damage wasn't there. The thing with Heizou is he obviously benefits a lot from the right supports. So I found that a Mona with the Thrilling Tales was excellent. Obviously, Benny buff is going to be great too. His damage by himself, it's pretty good, but it really gets where it needs to be when you buff him with the right characters, of course. I guess also I just wasn't used to the right rotations yet, so, timing the Thrilling Tales with Benny buff and then getting all your declension stacks took a bit of practice, and, if you miss your window where you're totally fully buffed, then the damage is not going to be as great. great, so maybe that's why I was a little underwhelmed. Since then, I've become more impressed. And I do love Heizou. Like any character, it takes some time to sink in, get used to the playstyle. Now that I'm a bit more used to it, I'm loving him a lot more. I'm a lot more impressed, and I'm not upset that I built him. So now I'm gonna talk about what I like about Heizou, what I don't like so much about Heizou, and where he's kind of rested now that I've had some time to think about it, play him some more. What do I like about him? First of all, I like that he brings a bit of a different flavor to not just Animo, but I guess the Catalyst in general. Like I think about Kazuha as a character, and also especially Sucrose, because she is also a Catalyst Animo character. Heizou's playstyle is very different, very unique, very fun. I think that's why a lot of people like him. I think that particular playstyle of, you know, fisticuffs, it's a little bit more palatable for me as someone who is not a big fan of Catalyst DPS. So, but yeah, basically I'm not really a Catalyst DPS person. If I use a Catalyst character, I like to throw out their skill, their ult, and then get on with it with usually a Claymore user, let's be honest. But Heizou's playstyle feels a little bit different, feels a little bit more heavy. I love like a heavy hit, you know? So because of that, I've been enjoying him, you know, far more than I thought I would for a Catalyst character. And that would be why, because of the unique playstyle. I do like that about Heizou. Next, I like that he can be built a little bit differently. As we know with a lot of Animo characters like Kazuha and Sucrose, you're using an EM build most of the time, right? So if you have those characters, then a lot of your EM artifacts might be taken up by your Kazuha, by your Sucrose, and there's not a lot to go around for poor little Heizou, right? The fact that you can use like a crit damage build, a more standard type DPS build, it really opens up your artifacts for your other Animo supports. So I like that a lot about Heizou. I found it way easier to build him with the artifacts I already have, especially using Glad. I have so much Glad, I mean, ugh. So personally, I think that's a big plus, and another reason to not run EM Heizou, as I was talking about in the beginning, based on your substats and everything. But honestly, if you have great EM substats, give them to your Kazuha, give them to your Sucrose. Heizou works absolutely perfectly well, and even probably better on a crit build. So that's another positive for sure. The next reason I love Heizou, big PP damage. I'm sure we've all seen the YouTube videos where this boy's like whipping out 1,000,000 damage with one little pinky. There it is, 1,000,000 damage. He's impressive, and he does a lot of damage when set up correctly, and obviously that's one of the things I like about him. I'm sure that's what a lot of people like about him. The next reason I like Heizou is because of this tasty little passive right here. After you use your elemental skill, Heizou buffs everyone else in your party's elemental mastery by 80 for 10 seconds. It doesn't affect him, it affects everyone else in your party for 10 seconds. So basically, like characters like if you have Benny to Xingqiu and you want to vape with them, then elemental mastery is going to help your reaction be stronger. So this is a nice little passive. ADM's nothing to sneeze at. Nice little passive. Another reason I like Heizou a lot. The final reason I like Heizou, his Korean voice is so stinking cute. I'm sure his voice in other languages is also fantastic, but I play the game in Korean, I experienced the game in Korean. I am used to the Korean voice, and it is so cute.
난 시카노인 헤이조라고 해. 텔리오 봉행에서 사건 해결이 가장 많고 빠른 탐정이지.
He's so excited about everything.
방금 내린 비에 단서가 지워지면 안 되는데.
He's just cute. I just think it's a cute voice. I think it's also a little different from what I've heard from the other voices. Like, it's just almost childlike, you know? Childlike wonder. Okay, so let's get into reasons why I don't like Heizou so much. First things first, I find that gaining the declension stacks can feel a little clunky. Now, it's not abnormal to have to gain stacks. A lot of characters have to do it. I main Ito, who also has to gain superlative stacks. It's very similar, right? Gain more stacks, more power when you do your skill, your burst, whatever. It's similar to Heizou. Yet, Ito feels a lot more smooth, and I know you might say, you got constellations on Ito. Of course he's more smooth. I'm talking even pre-constellation Ito, like C0 Ito, which I had for more time than I've had C4 Ito. It just feels smoother, and I've been thinking about why, and I think the best way I can describe why is because Ito can passively gain stacks, whereas Heizou has to actively gain stacks. So what I mean by that is, Ito can throw Ushi out on the field, and when Ushi gets hit, or when Ushi disappears off the field, Ito will gain stacks. So that's kind of what I'm referring to when I say passively, because Ito's not gaining the stacks by hitting the opponents. He does gain stacks by hitting opponents, but kind of that passive way of gaining stacks with Ushi makes it feel more smooth to me. Whereas Heizou gains stacks by swirling the enemies. And the easiest way to gain those stacks from the swirls is to use your auto attacks. And it just feels more clunky to me. I haven't had Heizou as long as I've had Ito, to be fair, but I just, even back in the day, I just remember this feeling smoother with Ito, getting the stacks being a little easier, you know what I mean? That's the number one thing I don't love about Heizou. It's obviously not a game breaker, but it is a little more work. The next thing I don't love so much about Heizou is I just feel like it takes a little more to set him up to do the damage, and that the rotations I've come up with, at least so far, are not as smooth as I'd like it to be. I get it kind of calls back to what I just said about it. Just feeling a little clunkier. Now, this might just be a me problem, needing more practice, needing smoother rotations, needing to maybe swap out different characters, but that's just, that's just what I'm feeling right now in this moment. It's just not as smooth. Not a deal breaker, but just throwing it out there. Honestly, that's kind of it for what I dislike about Heizou. The likes outweigh the dislikes for sure. My overall verdict is that he's a fun character who brings kind of a new flavor and new playstyle to the game, which is always wanted, always needed, and can still do some pretty big damage as well. Where it sits now, I don't regret building him at all, having a lot of fun, but I still wouldn't call him like an instant favorite, instant crown character. I like him. I don't want a Heizou body pillow that I sleep with every night. You know what I mean? That's not where I'm at. So I hear a lot of talk about how people find him so super satisfying to play. I'm in the middle camp. He's fun to play. I don't find him as smooth or as satisfying to play as Ito, for example, or even like my DPS Benny. I don't know why. That's just a personal preference. That has nothing to do with his character. So now that the novelty has worn off, I can comfortably say I like Heizou a lot. And I'm looking forward to keep on playing with him, to trying him with new characters. He's a fun time. But yeah, that does it for today's video. Let me know if you like this idea for a series. When I think about future videos that could be in the series, I can't see them turning out very negatively because I tend to not waste my resources on characters I don't want to build to begin with. So I assume most of these are going to be positive, which isn't a bad thing, but I can give a more detailed reason as to what I do and what I don't like about a character when the novelty has worn off and when I've just had more time to use them. Let me know if you like that idea. Let me know if you don't. I don't know, it's free country. Anyway, feel free to join me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Meijin, Meijin, and I can show you my Heizou live on stream. Wouldn't that be great? He can punch you in the face right there. It's gonna be awesome. And that's gonna do it for me for today. I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye! Don't forget to follow. No. What happened to my voice there?